and welcome to another episode of Hanukkah Erotica Book Club. I'm Raizel, and I'm joined by my stepsister and co-host, Malya. Hi, Mal.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. We're doing a morning recording, so this is a little bit of a different mode I'm in. But we've already been to a bris. I had my white fish bagel, had some coffee, so I'm at my best, I feel.
Oh my! You've already been to a bris.
Been to a bris already.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. Yes, it's the same mohel that did the bris for our son. So good to see him in action.
How'd he do?
I think he did. I remember for Julius 2 years ago, I literally thought he was still preparing, and it was done already. Like
Oh my God. Okay.
couldn't believe it.
An expert.
Yeah, and again, someone next to me was like, "It hasn't happened yet. It's the cutting. The cutting's still coming, right?" And I was like, "No, they did the cutting. It's over." Everyone.
Wow.
This
Time
guy's
for the
real.
whitefish.
Yeah, Rabbi Heller, everybody. I recommend for your mohel needs.
Okay. Noted.
Julius, right.
Okay, so we have a huge episode. Something very. William agrees?
William's interjecting that Julius's penis looks great. That's our 2-year-old.
Okay.
So
Baruch
kudos.
Hashem.
Yes, Baruch Hashem.
Okay, so we have a little bit of catching up to do, but we have a really big episode today, which I want to get to. But any feedback from our last episode? Nice Jewish boys.
Well, I feel like our little side rant, as always, the side rants have some good stuff. I know my sister was telling me that she I think she wrote this on our Instagram, that she really related to our side rant about identifying with mom characters now instead of like teenage girl characters. That I actually want to talk about that more today, because I feel like, I don't know, that was just a rich moment
In this book, too, that we're talking about today.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Well, I had one funny thing, which was that our Jonathan segment, said that we should have a segment of the show where we share Jonah Platt quotes and Jonah Mintz quotes, my 2-year-old.
And who said it?
Who said what? Right.
I love it.
Which I thought was hilarious. But then a few minutes later, he got to the part of the episode where Jonah, the gay conversion therapy program, just got to bad Jonah, a third Jonah of the episode. He's like, I just got to bad Jonah. So that really made me laugh.
That's really funny.
It was great. I didn't hear from the author. I don't, because I don't know that she's so active on Instagram, but we loved that book. Can't believe she wrote it as a teenager, Nice Jewish Boys. But I obviously always have lots to say, but I'm so excited about today's episode. I'm ready to dive right in, unless there was anything juicy about your weekend, anything you want to share.
No, I think I'm ready to dive in. Let's do it.
I'm ready to dive in. I did have a wild weekend, but I'm ready to dive in.
Well, no.
It was just a work wedding. Family was here. We have from family in Baltimore, and they come every year for the 4th of July. And then we transform our house. We have a kosher grill, kosher cutting board, kosher salad bowl, cutting. It's amazing what you could do. A hot plate.
Wow, so nice.
I mean, it's like 4 days. It's so cool. This hot plate is by this brand Tekyid.
Okay.
Do you know Tekyid? And it has a timer. Does your hot plate have a timer on, off?
I don't have a hot plate.
Turns on. No hot plate.
No hot plate. I'm hot plateless. Should I get a hot plate? Do I need a hot plate?
I don't know if you've had 40 years of Shabbos without a hot plate. I feel like you're fine.
I have. I've made it through. I've had an old-fashioned blech, but maybe that's old school.
Blechs, yeah, it just scares me with fires, but all this stuff is scary. Anyway, it's Tekyid, which made me laugh. And
Tekyid.
It turns on when you need it to turn on, and then you can heat your lunch, and then it turns off, and then it turns back on at 7 or whenever you want it to turn back on to heat up for Shalashudas. Very cool.
Wow. Great.
Tekyid.
Yeah. I'm glad
Hot
that's...
tip. Not an ad. We're not sponsoring this brand. Just sincerely excited.
I would love to sponsor Tekyid, though, if there's an advertising
Tekyid,
opportunity.
if you're listening, Tekyid.
I'm imagining a logo with a guy with payas and like a smartphone device or something that.
I'm gonna have our cousins take a picture to show you, or we'll find it online. But it's our cousin Moshe who has the podcast on erectile dysfunction.
Oh, it was him.
He's like, how's the podcast going? I'm like, oh, it's great every other week. How's yours going? Great every other week. I'm like, look at us.
bonding over tech kids and podcasts.
Yeah,
that's really cute.
It's so fun. It's so fun having them, and they have 4 girls. Binny and Jonah just have the best time with them, and it was awesome.
Really sweet. That's so sweet.
Yes, and a work wedding, just all sorts of fun stuff. But okay, let's dive in. For this week's episode, we read Lolita at Leonard's of Great Neck and Other Stories from the Before Times by Shira Dicker. I have so much to say about the book. I cannot wait to talk about it, but we have Shira Dicker here today.
Yes.
And we are so excited. So Shira, welcome.
Hey, hi everybody.
Hello, welcome.
Hi. So, video, yes? Okay.
Yep.
Here we go. What? And I'm back. Yes.
Yay.
Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for letting me be a fly on the wall during the preamble conversation. Techid, you can't make this stuff up, right?
You can't.
It's the best.
It's brilliant. It's like if there were a bit about it, it would be called Techid. Like, you just can't make it up. Shira, welcome. We're so excited that you're here. I can't wait to talk to you about this amazing book. So a little background. I mean, a lot of background. Malya and I are stepsisters. Our parents are married. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in Great Neck, but my shul was in Queens.
Which shul?
So, Little Neck Jewish Center. So reading this, being from Great Neck with a shul in Queens, and then Malya was born in Brooklyn and went to Queens College. Like, I'm sure with the... was
totally.
That what CUNY
this is
East
like
was?
our home turf. No, all that...
There's so much to... It's like the level of detail in this book was written for readers like us. We appreciate... Malya and I haven't even talked about it yet because we like to save it for the episodes.
Yes.
But the level of detail was so rich. I can't wait to unpack so much of it with you. We became stepsisters as adults. I think you may know our parents. Malya's dad is Arthur Kurzweil, and my mom is Bobby Dor Kurzweil or Bobby Furkauf. I don't know. She has had 4 last names.
I know Arthur super well. He was briefly my editor.
Oh.
We can talk about it. Yeah, that's wild. You know what's so weird? I feel like all roads lead back to Great Neck. The amount of feedback that I'm getting with variations, right? About whether someone was born there, moved away. A friend called me. She's South African. I had no idea she had a Great Neck connection. And she and I met for coffee just to discuss what Great Neck was like in the 60s and 70s. She's 10 years older. You guys are approximately 15, 20 years younger than me. But some things persist despite the passage of time. There's something about Northeast Queens and this section of Long Island, which is, of course, on the Queens border, right? Nassau County. Right. It all comes together at Lake Success, Great Neck, Little Neck, Beach Hills, Douglaston, where I grew up, and my dad had a shul. So we will unpack.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, the title alone, having driven past Leonard's multiple times a day, and that staircase and just the setting of that first story. Something that I thought was amazing about this book was, I know that you say it's 5 novellas, but I feel like I got to read 5 full books.
Totally.
It was so generous.
Yeah, thank you.
There was so much richness. And I was so excited when I saw the second story was set with Queens College because of Malya. I just thought it was so cool. But let me ask you, I have a very specific question about bar mitzvahs in that time.
Yes.
Would teachers have been invited?
Oh, totally. Totally. And yes, whiskey sours were served. Dads were, I mean, this is hilarious. And I did a book launch in New York 2 weeks ago. The food was 1970s bar mitzvah cocktail, Frank's
that's
blankets,
fun.
and
so fun.
Mini egg rolls and little mini knishes. And I had someone specifically hired to make whiskey sours. Yes, teachers were invited. And in the 70s, the story, I will just say, I was in 8th grade in 1974. And that was, of course, the age the B'nai Mitzvah started when I was in 7th grade, which was 73. And they continued, you know how it goes, right? Like some of the kids are older. I was young for my grade, meaning I'm a November birthday. So I entered 8th grade as 12 3/4. So some of the boys started having their B'nai Mitzvah when I was in 7th grade. So 7th, 8th grade, that was the thing. And yes, teachers were routinely invited. I was also at the wedding of one of my teachers from 5th grade. I don't know why. I would never invite, if I was a teacher, my 10-year-old children to my wedding. But okay, it was it was exciting.
That really is. My one part of my bat mitzvah was in Israel, and my 8th grade science teacher was in Israel at the time, and so my mom so she was there. Unusual for in the late 1990s for a teacher to be there. But my head of Blitz was on Masada.
Wow.
At my bat mitzvah.
Oh, wow.
But I thought that, the vision, when Molly and I first met, Arthur told us a story about the Viennese table. Molly, do you remember us laughing?
Yes, of course. I died from that story. Yes. And I totally thought of it immediately.
Yes. He described to us how the Viennese table would sort of be introduced, and for whatever reason, Molly cracked us up. The Viennese table, and then the Viennese table's brought out.
Because he would say that it was like, he would say that sometimes it would be even behind a curtain, and they would open the curtain, and then people would applaud. Like you would rise and you would applaud the table. That just made me laugh so much. And you didn't have that exactly in the book, but the Viennese table as
the Viennese table was
entity
there, though.
Was really good. Yes.
Right. And the character, you may remember, Rebecca says it's an ancient custom from Vienna or something like that. The provenance of this, the backstory, it was so mysterious, but it was so amazing to see so many desserts. It was before this time of plenty where you could get all this stuff. Right. It was very exciting. And for people like me, not originally from Great Neck, but from Queens, and there's a whole socioeconomic divide, right? It's a matter of just like stepping over the border. It was huge, you know, for kids from Queens. Going to a Leonard's bar mitzvah was just dying and going, especially to dessert heaven, which I think is a line from the book. So
right. And to say, it's like, I heard his mom got carnival carts of candy. It's like, I get it. I could taste it. It was just so rich, even in the dancing scene. And by the way, speaking of teachers and teachers at bar mitzvahs, but teachers in general, I think also, going back to this game of Jewish geography, that your mom might have been my brother Howie's first preschool teacher at Bethel.
Oh, absolutely. My mother taught at Bethel, and my Aunt Irene was the director of Bethel.
Yes, and your Aunt Irene and my mom, Aunt Irene inspired my mom to want to go back to grad school to get her degree, which she ended up not really. She has a whole thing about your mom, Aunt Irene. Yeah.
This is amazing.
Yeah, so sweet. Amazing. Yeah. Okay, so we, our readers met. I want to say this our listeners. I want to say this to our listeners. Sometimes with the books that we read, sometimes it's like in this podcast, we read the books and then review them. So sometimes our listeners don't necessarily have to. This is not that book. No. This is a book that everybody should read. Anyone who's ever enjoyed our podcast or ever known us would adore this book. And we won't do spoilers to the point of you don't have to pause this podcast and come back to it if you don't want. But this is a book that everybody should read. We loved it. And I really think that our listeners would just adore it, eat it up.
I loved it because, I guess I was thinking about this because it had so many fun details, but at the same time, a really sophisticated emotional narratives, which I often feel like you don't find. Like, that the fun details are, like, we've been talking about YA books and how a lot of YA books have all these fun details, and I'm like, more books should have these sort of fun, specific, vivid details about clothes and what people are listening to and watching and the media. That's what helps to paint a picture, but also these complex girls and women. And this book, I felt like had satisfied all of that, which is what made it so just enjoyable.
Thank you.
It really did. There was later in one of the stories, the two writers, I could smell the Tommy girl, the Daphne, the daughter. She's wearing Tommy girl. She gives her mom her juicy sweatsuit in a moment of such generosity. No
Mm-hmm.
teenage girl wants to share her matching juicy velour sweatsuit, but her mom's in a moment in need, and she gives her her juicy sweatsuit to wear to the hospital. She's reeking of Tommy girl. There's blackberries. The music is playing that you could just, it's such a, every story you write sets such a time and place. And it made me wonder about your writing process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Were you writing these stories reflecting back? Were you writing some of these stories in the moment, or were there journals? Like, I'm just so curious how you were able to get
Mm-hmm.
us there
Mm-hmm.
so vividly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first of all, one of my maxims, something I think about all the time, and I get very stubborn about this also when somebody is recounting something to me and the details feel off or imprecise, I will be that annoying person, kind of like the detail cop, to get it right. No, 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 that's not the correct thing. I think I have a lot of sense memory. I remember things vividly.
Hmm.
And I'm known in my family either admired or considered a liability for my amazing memory of far yonder distant memories into the early 60s when I was tiny, tiny, tiny.
Hmm.
My mom, thank God, Rochelle is 90. I was with her yesterday. She had some medical things, and we were talking about our summer cottage in the Catskills, where I was really small. And I remembered that I was in The Wizard of Oz. I was a munchkin. And my mother, because, you know, sometimes she'll forget that she knows something. She gets delighted again and again to hear that I remember, because she remembered that I was a munchkin. But details. So I will say the first story I wrote was Lolita. The bar mitzvah scenes at Leonard's were so magical, were so much a part of the landscape of my childhood. And I really feel that I'm observing it. I'm almost like the curator of a museum of that time and
Hmm.
place. It's not just time, but it's also place.
Yes.
And so part of it was really going into it, for better or for worse. I feel that I'm in touch with 13-year-old me, 18-year-old me, and that the moment, what it felt like. And thank you for calling out also the emotional um, freightedness and fullness that goes along with the details. And as I start writing about these places and spaces, it comes back to me in ways that I remember the smells, right? And the double bubble, right? One of the obnoxious
Yes.
girls in the
Yeah,
bathroom,
Lenore with the double bubble.
yeah, is blowing double bubble. I just remember, and I remember how nauseating that smell is, breathed into your face. So the process, I guess, so these stories, I should say the backstory to this book was that I wrote the stories starting around, I think, 2007 or so. I got an agent around 2010, 2011. I did a master's degree at Columbia, 2010 to 2011 in art and culture writing. And I promptly got an agent who was wonderful. And the book almost sold and didn't sell. And then I just got caught up. It's not that I said, forget about it. It was more like life, work, kids graduating college, kids having boyfriends and girlfriends, getting married, Trump, the pandemic, my beloved father getting sick, my beloved father dying, life
Hmm.
happened. And it wasn't until February of 2023 that I felt motivated. And my agent and I, who I still love, it's not that she said, forget it. It's kind of like it just fizzled. You know what? It's like a relationship. You don't really break up, but you just stop. It just like fizzles out. Like no one said we're over. It's just over. It's just kind of fizzled out until. But and then when I went back into the stories to read them, I will say I was impressed with some of this stuff. I was like, wow, yes, and it came alive. So the process for me is very immersive. When I write, I can write in a very crowded, loud place, and I go into my cone of silence and cone of concentration, and it just I'm just in it, and I just start writing. I'm a very what's the word I'm looking for here? I edit very heavily. I don't publish anything first draft. It's really rare, whether it's an essay or if it's a piece of reportage, certainly fiction. Even my speeches, I tend to write out. I very rarely will get up and speak off the top of my head. I really like to, and I think it just comes from being a writer and wanting to get it right. So it starts usually with the character and with a memory. And I will say Lolita is one of my favorite books. And I read it at various times in my life. I read it when I was inappropriately young, and I admired Lolita. I admired that. And I didn't get the great humor. It just seemed to me a very daring book. And I was always, my mission in life was to be bad, sophisticated, experienced. I would go to summer camp with the goals of like, okay, this is a first and a half base summer. I'm totally going to second base this summer. I'm going to have 4 boyfriends. Like I had, in a way, I did what guys do a little bit. And so, as I said, I'm kind of in touch. I start with, so Lolita, coming back to Lolita, one day as I subsequently reread Lolita as a teenager and was really surprised, and then twice as an adult, once in my late 20s and then once about 12 years ago, where the obsessive nature of Humbert, and it struck me as hysterical and tragic, but I longed to know what Lolita's experience was. And I don't know how well you know the book, but there is this visitation with the grown-up Lolita, whose real name is Dolores, and she's not all that. It's kind of a disappointing ending. This sex pot little 12-year-old ends up very pedestrian and all that. I recall, first of all, as I'm sure you guys do, being 11 and 12 and beginning to be what we called boy crazy. As someone who's heteronormative, a word that did not exist in the 70s. So I'll just say,
we know.
It was all definitely, I look back now at my elementary school class, I'm aware of at least one member of my class who was gay and nobody knew. There were, some clues later on you find out, oh, so-and-so is gay. And then you look back and you go, you know what? Not that surprising when I actually start thinking about it. But for somebody like myself, heteronormative, heterosexual, and obsessed, I started just remembering the experience of like spring awakening, being aware of boys, being aware of my body. Also, I'm a real Judy Blume girl. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret came out at the same time that I was hitting puberty, and I was knocked out. My mother got me the book, and kudos Rochelle, right? That deals frankly with things like growing boobs. And I specifically say boobs and not breasts, because it's like, and being normal and getting your period and just being proud and self-conscious and horrified. And the boys one's age were, to my mind, so pathetic. So I always was looking up, and so that's what I want to say.
I relate to this so deeply. I was very boy crazy at a youngish age, and I was thinking, like, there wasn't a teacher I ever had a crush on in that way, and also, like, I think that felt probably scary to me as a kid. But I have a clear memory of being on the day camp bus. I must have been in middle school. I could have been even younger. And I stuck my leg into the aisle of the bus to feel the hair of the hairy bus counselor's leg against my leg. Ari. His name was Ari. And I remember so clearly, like, sticking my little leg out just to feel it brush against mine. Like, really, really boy crazy and intense. But speaking of boobs and language in general in the book.
Yes.
I loved your author's note at the beginning. We read books with a ton of content warnings, trigger warnings, and we're very aware of it. But you made this analogy, comparison to the Dumbo. There's some warning at the beginning of Dumbo now. And a lot of the Disney movies have that now, where they say there's racist content in this movie. We haven't changed it to as a reminder of the times and to encourage conversation and all this. I'm butchering the language a little, but you did the same. And you did it really well. You know, I appreciated that the author's note was in there, because if I had started to read the book and then seen some of the language in the book, specifically the R word, I would say is the one you're probably referring to most.
Yeah.
I would have bristled at it, and having that warning in advance as a reminder, like, this is to keep you in the moment, because this is what would have happened at this bar mitzvah. This is how we would have spoken if I was at a Greek diner in Queens with my teenage cousin, like this.
Yes.
And it made so much sense. So I really appreciated the warning. But back to boobs, I just have to read this one part from the book. This is the Lolita chapter. And we haven't specifically said this for our listeners, but this first book in this 5 novellas is about a child at a bar mitzvah and a crush on her math teacher. And it gets a little bit steamy, inappropriate. And you say it in the author's note, also innocent, but more inappropriate than innocent. It says, though I was completely flat at the end of 7th grade, I had started to grow boobs over the summer, and now they were coming in fast and furious. In a few months, I had gone from no bra to a 32 AAA teen charm, to a 34A maiden form, and now, at Jesse's bar mitzvah, I was pushing out of the 34A. I made my mother buy me a fiber-fill bra during our last visit to Alexander's because I was in a constant state of nippleitis, or noticeable nipple syndrome. I was laughing. I remember each bra.
Uh-huh.
And this idea, even the language of like, I made my mom buy, that's how my 3rd grader feels. Like, she badgers me into buying things in such a way. Like, I made my mom buy. It cracked me up. It also got me thinking, based on the story in Queens, like, were you shopping at Denny's? Were you shopping at Mazer's for kosher food? Like, because you also have the Samuel Field Y. I went to the Samuel Field Y.
So did I.
Yeah, I saw that was in the book.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about some of those stores, but I don't know when Mazer's opened.
So I know Mazer's. So when I lived in Douglaston, I lived there and I should also put this note in, it doesn't come up in my stories, but just a fun detail. I mean, it's a fact. So I was adopted, and my parents adopted me. I was born November 1960. This is a whole other thing. And in fact, I'm working on a work of nonfiction called The Adopted Wife, which is really a meditation on adoption as an identity. But I was in foster care for 5 months, and my parents adopted me in April of 61. So I lived in that area from April of 61 to the summer of 1977, when my father, who was the rabbi of the Marathon Jewish Community Center,
Marathon Jewish Center, I know.
Yeah, he became a clinical psychologist, and we moved. He left the shul, and we moved to Forest Hills, and he had an office in Forest Hills and in Manhattan. So I don't know if Mazer's might have been there. Denny's was not. I shopped at Denny's subsequently for my kids, because my parents went from Forest Hills, then they moved to Great Neck, and one of my siblings lives in Great Neck. But I lived up the hill from this iconic, super trashy department store that was renowned for its record department, and it was called Corvettes with a K.
My grandpa owned it.
What? What? No, your grandpa owned Corvettes?
Yes, and in the book,
as you were saying that, I was like, this is going to be Corvettes. That's so funny.
I was like, when you said record department, because everyone said they got their first record at Corvettes. My grandpa was Eugene Furkauf. He owned Corvettes. And in the book, you say Corvette, and it's next to Wallbaum's, and I know Erica, whose grandpa owned Wallbaum, so I was like, you have to read this book. Corvettes and Wallbaum's are in the same sentence.
Corvettes was the apex. It was the center. First of all,
the one in the shopping center in
shopping
Douglaston.
Center. Everybody learned how to drive. Stores were closed on Sunday when I was a kid. Everybody's mother or father took them to drive in the Corvettes parking lot on Sundays, okay? Second of all, I'm sorry for what I said about the store being, but it was. The record department was insane. The clothes were like, they weren't brand.
It was cheap. It was discount.
Discount.
Yes.
It was I also shoplifted from Corvettes. I had this I have an amazing shoplifting story. Maybe not for this podcast. I'll save it. Or if you want, I can tell it. But Corvettes was everything. They also had an amazing candy department. And something I wrote subsequently, and a novel that's still unpublished, not subsequently, actually previously, called Revelations of a Rabbi's Daughter. One of the chapters was published in an anthology called Nice Jewish Girls. There is a section about going to the chocolate counter and buying these white chocolate stars, and how I used to eat off, like it would take me a week to eat them. I would eat off each star, like corner of the star,
Like the
one at a
point.
time. Point, thank you. And so no, that was my world. We lived up the block from Corvettes. I mean, I used to
Wow.
take my bike there and practice wheelies, and
Oh my
oh
God.
my God. So yeah, no, this was a time and a place, and it was lovely. And that whole area of Queens, it's really set off from what I consider mainland Queens. And it's very suburban, and it was gorgeous, gorgeous in the
Yeah.
60s and 70s.
It's interesting because you said that there's certain things like, Great Neck's changed, but there's certain things that have stayed the same. But Queens has really changed. I went
Yeah.
we have family in Jamaica Estates. My mom's from Jamaica Estates, and we have family in Jamaica Estates on the other side of the family. And Jews aren't moving back there in the same way.
Yeah,
It is different.
it is. It
Jamaica,
is.
like the Jewish community in Queens is shrinking.
Yes. Well, I'll just tell you,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for my okay, sorry, my son querying me about something. He can wait a little bit. Um, so yes, and my dad, so the Marathon Jewish Community Center is no more. If I move the camera,
Marathon.
you could see my father's bima chair, which I retrieved from the shul before they
Oh, wow.
officially closed it down. I wrote a column saying goodbye to the shul and going to retrieve my dad's bima chair with a U-Haul clattering over the RFK Bridge, the former Triborough, and we held a funeral for the shul building 2 years ago. It was in its heyday. This was a vibrant, activistic, traditional, but very liberal, socially very liberal community. And I think it extended also to the Little Neck Jewish Center and Temple
Oh, for
Torah.
sure.
It was
For
a
sure.
great time and place, but there are no Jews now. It is
No.
heavily Asian and Southeast Asian. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, and young Ashkenazi Jews, or affiliated or even unaffiliated Jews, or affiliated, but let's say Jews who would join a Reform synagogue are not moving back to Great Neck either, unless they're Persian.
Yes.
It really is different now. It really is. I
huge.
feel like I graduated in 2002. I feel like it was the last of families moving back to Great Neck. It's really changed, which is why reading this book, I just appreciated it so much that those whole chapter about Persephone's palace, the diner, and the cousins. Malya and I, every summer, this is our second summer, always want to go have books about Jewish summer camp, Jews in the Catskills. That's why I was so excited when you said that you had a house in the Catskills, because I thought maybe one day we'll get a Catskills book from you, because we're craving them, and we're always craving books about Jews in the summer. So when we started to read this one, I don't think either of us knew that there would be this summer camp storyline, and it's exactly, we were craving it.
And that story is also sort of, I don't know, is City College East supposed to be Queens College, or was there? Yeah, because I went
Totally.
there.
Yeah.
I mean, years later, but you really, first of all, just the geography with Jewel Avenue and Austin Street and all that, like I was imagining it all, and I mean, a theme through the whole book is sort of like all the main characters seem to be sort of like, and maybe this is, I don't know if this is autobiographical, it sounds like maybe it is, but that identity is kind of like, there's sort of like the normal regular girl, and then there's the narrator, or sort of
Yes.
the good girl, or whatever it is. And in this one, like that Queens College good girl who just came back from Israel and has the long skirt and is pushing like the party about the semester abroad and is talking about like that was so, and is in the kosher calf, like that was, you painted that picture just so accurately.
Yeah.
And I guess
Thank
I
you.
wonder, do you feel, because another thing is, you sort of take us like through the life cycle with all of these stories. The main characters are at these different points in their lives, but they always seem to be sort of like I don't know, the story always seems to be about them. There's the normal girls at the bat mitzvah who are just, putting on their lipstick in the bathroom, and then there's like the narrator who's like making out with the math teacher. There's like the good cousin, and then there's
smoking cigarettes and drinking.
Right. So it's always. So I guess I just wonder: is that you at every stage of life? Like, how much of this? I mean, how much of this is it literally is any of it literally autobiographical, or is it just sort of like your headspace of how you see yourself in the world more generally? I guess I was just, because it felt so real. I guess we always think how much of this is real because it feels so, like we said, detailed.
Thank you.
And this was just so rich.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Also, I just had I'm struck by conscience. Give me 1 second. Let me just tell my son doing podcast. He needs my Met card. He wants to go. Ask Dad. Dad happens
Kind
to
of want to keep this into the episode.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So I had a big book launch 2 weeks ago at the JCC. I'm proud in Manhattan, I should say, because there are JCCs everywhere. The Marlene Meyerson JCC sold out.
I really wanted to go. We were talking about going, but then.
But fear not, I want to do an event at Leonard's. I've already talked to Leonard.
Yes.
By the way, I had to get permission to use the name of business. So I decided to use it as an opportunity to come by, get to know the general manager, Eric, who's a great guy. And so, he thinks it's a wonderful thing. So stay tuned. I think I will be doing something in the fall.
Cool.
So I had my book launch on the 26th in New York. And the following day, I was invited to speak at the Great Neck Public Library. And I'm doing all kinds of different book things. Stay tuned. I'm doing something at the 92NY, which is the new cool name of the 92nd Street Y. This morning, I was on the phone for a really cool program. I just want to say it has to do with being a grandparent writing about sex, because I am a grandparent. And so in answer to your question, I will quote myself from my Great Neck talk. So these stories, there's certainly, first of all, as my 13-year-old self would have said in answer to the question, are these autobiographical? That's for me to know and you to find out. But no, in all seriousness, I would say that the truest thing that I could say, and I hope that's not pinging like crazy. I'm bad at turning off notifications. No. All my children are deciding to contact me now. They're all adults, by the way. Is that these stories can be seen as what if stories. Okay, so there is a spark of something authentic that happened, and I'll tell you where I'm comfortable explaining exactly how this worked. So, and I'll use the conversation I had with my mom about 2 months ago about Lolita. So I read my mom. I did a personal live reading of Lolita from the manuscript before the printed book was out. My mom lives in Great Neck, and she loved it. She absolutely loved it. And then she said to me, "Who was Mr. Miller?" And I have to tell you, I didn't have an answer. It's not that I was hiding the answer. I truly didn't have an answer, because when I wrote it, he was an invented character, maybe a composite. But I wanted to reassure her and say, when I was 13, I did not make out with my math teacher. That is a true statement. And I say that deliberately and in a very specific way. And then I thought about it and I said, no, I remember my math teacher totally. No, not a crush on him. No, and then all of a sudden I remembered who my crush was, who Mr. Miller was based on. And I'm comfortable sharing this because I've told this story. And it was interesting. I didn't think about it until my mom asked me. And I thought, okay, so it was a janitor at the North Shore Hebrew Academy / Great Neck Synagogue, because in those days, North Shore Hebrew Academy was located in the synagogue building on Old Mill Road. And there was a family of custodians. I imagine they were from Puerto Rico. I think they were. And I seem to remember that there were living quarters underneath part of the shul. And one of the guys was the hottest, cutest teen I've seen in my entire life. So again, I noticed him when I was in 8th grade. His name was Tony. And it didn't hurt that West Side Story had just aired on television the previous year. I remember when I was in 7th grade, it was a big moment in my life and in everyone's life, West Side Story. This guy was every member of the Sharks, the gang, the Sharks, every Jet. He was just archetypical heartthrob teenage boy. And, and how I flirted with him was I used to sneak out of class. I used to run into the Great Neck Synagogue catering section, hide under one of the tables with the fancy skirts, and then pop out and scare him to death. Be like, boo! That was my flirtation with him. That made sense and to me at the time. And the turning point, and I would say the end of my flirtation, came when I was sneaking out of class, and I was constantly in the principal's office. Fun fact, the actor and comedian Jackie Hoffman was in my class. She wrote one of the blurbs, and we were besties.
Wow.
She's great. We were constantly getting kicked out of class. She snuck Mad Magazine into class, and we would have our Talmud up on the table, and we'd be like laughing our butts off and forget it. But anyway, I snuck out of class again, and I was sneaking into Great Neck Synagogue, except Tony headed me off. And we stood really close to each other. I was staring at each other, and he said to me, as if he practiced these words, he said, "You are so beautiful." And I felt, holy crap.
Oh my God.
And I turned, and that was it. I never flirted with him again. It was like something went off in me.
Too real.
Too real. So I will say that the setup, so the most complex and tragic story in the collection is definitely Persephone's Palace.
Yeah.
The premise is an 18-year-old Jewish girl who is she is hemmed in. She's forced to go to a school definitely modeled on Queens College. It's called City College East. Her parents love her to death, maybe love her too much. And I use the word to death very deliberately. And she's just trying to break free. She is rebellious. She's a good kid, but she just needs to be somewhere else, anywhere else. And here she is, imprisoned in the borough of Queens, with all these good girls at Queens College. And I just remember, and, I definitely, yes, that's based on Queens College in my day. And of course, what ended up happening was I found, the cool Irish, Italian secret boyfriend. I found all the cool European kids. I mentioned them in passing. Yeah. They became my friends. I found there were people who thought Queens College was great because they were not with the kosher cafeteria crew. And in my 4 years there, I never set foot, I just wanted to be somewhere else, anywhere else, right. CBGBs, full, during the day, during the night, Europe, Israel, if I couldn't get to Europe. So I will tell you that the setup for the story, which is that this girl comes back from her disgraced summer. She runs away from a camp in Ojai, California, called in the story Camp Sabra. It is actually Camp Ramah in Ojai. And yours truly ran away, wanted to go to California. My parents said, okay, you have to get a job at a camp. And I went with the idea that I was leaving camp, which is what I did.
The idea of running away during Tisha B'Av made me laugh out loud because everyone would have been, it was so funny that's when the character schemes to be able to run away.
Totally. That was so, like Tisha B'Av, like the whole 3-week summer camp is like so specific and bizarre. If you haven't been, even if you have been in it, but definitely if you haven't, that was brilliant.
Yeah, I am so shaped by my summer camp experiences, which it was a smush of Camp Ramah, Camps Masad Aleph, Masad Bet, and Masad Gimel, believe it or not, Camp Sedgwin, which was the Reconstructionist summer camp. And then my parents must have just lost their minds for 2 summers or they were just bewitched by somebody, and they sent us to Camp Moshava, the B'nai Akiva camp, which was fun, but it was militaristic and really religious, and everyone made fun of me that my father was a conservative rabbi. I still found the bad boy to make my boyfriend because, the kids are kids, and nobody...
Water seeks its own level.
Yes, exactly. But so I will say that I did meet with my cousin, Rena, who is not Mandy. Mandy is actually modeled after somebody else. But I did meet with my cousin Rena at the Georgia Diner when I came back from my debauched summer of bumming around the West Coast and staying with my crazy Uncle Oscar, who took me to discos and going to San Francisco and inflicting myself on my friend Lisa's sister who had a new baby. And I'm sure the last person she wanted to see was rebellious, 17 or 18-year-old me. I think I was actually 17. But we were in this diner. We were in the Georgia diner, and we're talking. And I looked as described, like long, crazy hair, deeply tan. I get very dark during the summer. And all of a sudden I look over and there's this guy just staring at me, and I still have the business card. So the first part of the story happened. He was German, and he came over, and what I have him say is what he said to me. And I was just so blown away, and I have the card, and he was staying at the Hilton in room 1207. And that card is somewhere. I'm going to say that what happens to the girl in the story did not, there's the fiction departure. There is the imaginative flight of fancy. So I would say that some of the premises are based on an actual thing. In the Museum of Eroticism, this man in the museum that Claire meets, the guy in black leather, I met that guy in the museum about 12 years ago. And the second I saw him, I was like, who is this? What is this? And this story, about 3 weeks later, I was with my sister. We were in hysterics. I mean, it was like Mr. S&M walking through, like, what is this guy? Is he part of the exhibit? Is he? And all of a sudden, the story just started taking shape in my head. So I would say that it's ripped, like the details are ripped from my own life. My brother, who's a doctor who lives in Great Neck, shout out to Brother Morty, the gastroenterologist, best gastro in New York, greater New York. He's not
shout out to Brother Morty.
Yes, he's
we'll
not.
Take a sponsorship from you, Morty.
He's not a fiction reader, and I was so flattered. He called me tomorrow. Look at that. I'm like, he called me yesterday and he told me he's into the third story, and he said it's so much fun because he recognizes details, and he's hoping that not all these things happen to me. And I was like, more it is for me to know and you to find out. He didn't even know. He didn't even know about my summer at Camp Ramano High, because he was 3 years younger, and he was into his own thing. He was in being the star tennis pro at Camp Tagola. I don't even know where he was. So yeah, summer camp.
It's I guess basing it, on these rich memories and these experiences with this kind of what if fiction added to it it's such magic. I understand why someone who's not such a fiction reader would still be devouring the book. There's certain things in that Persephone's palace scene.
The beginning with all the desserts on the desserts.
Exactly. You could just taste them.
But then you saying the real secret is these desserts are all terrible was so funny. That made me laugh. But also, like,
it's so true.
It's so true of like those desserts that you covet and you look at and they're never going to live up to your expectations.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure. And this idea that our families have these made up rules separate from the rules of kashrut, of what's treif and what's not.
Yes.
Where someone like this character, Anna, is like, this is so ridiculous and poking holes in what's so illogical. Like, this egg is being fried on the pan. Like, I appreciate that so much of what they really can eat. Like, really, they could just eat the cold bagel. But what they've decided that they can eat the eggs, even though they absolutely cannot eat the eggs. It's the same as eating anything else. But of course, we know so many people that have a kosher home and only eat vegetarian now, but really it's all the same. It's just, I just appreciate that kind of
but also,
nuance
I
about
liked
what's
that,
treif.
And also I liked that, like, that's so true to how an 18-year-old is, I feel like, of like, of being so disgusted by the hypocrisy of that. Like, what, like, oh, my family, like, they act like this hot plate is kosher, like, how ridiculous, like, just being so scornful and disdainful of that. And I just love, that's what, because we were talking about, I was mentioning earlier, before you came on, Shira, that we were talking about how I've found, like, as I've gotten older, that I identify less and less with these, like, pubescent or young girl characters and just what they're thinking about and what, you know, what is on their mind seems less relevant to me. And I'm more like with the 40-year-old, you know, mom characters. Like that's what, just because that's where I am and that's what I relate to. But it felt like you were able to capture in this very sort of genuine, nuanced and like respectful way, like where a person at that age is in their mind. Like, I don't know. I just thought I wouldn't be. I can't imagine being able to do that. Maybe I'm like too stuck in my current moment. But
it was I felt inspired by it. I felt like this is the book I would have wanted to write. Like it's so, I mean, it's incredible and relatable and so nuanced in these amazing, rich ways. And even in that hotel, the Hotel of Eroticism, Claire with this older guy. And you know, at one point she goes to put in the diaphragm. She knows he's pro-life. She has all these memories of things that have happened. She knows he's pro-life, and he's so angry and becomes controlling and scary. And that the way that you wrote that, like, there's just so, because again, it's like the specific details about the museum and the hotel and every single thing that we could see, taste, experience in the book, but then also these really powerful emotions that you feel in relationships, that you feel within yourself, that you feel with cousins and overprotective parents, these kinds of this relationship with this controlling older husband. It's like there's just so much there, which is why I feel it was so generous, because it felt like 5 amazing books put together in this gift.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I have a friend who's an author. His name is Dan Victor. He wrote a very good book called The Evil Inclination. And he said to me he felt, and he wondered if I concurred, he felt that this could be, he felt the stories were linked. When he had asked me, I said, no, these are separate stories, separate characters. He felt they could have been, it's novelistic. I mean, I don't feel this way. Claire is very specific. Claire is Claire from the Museum of Eroticism. You know, she is a unformed young woman who is, from her early father loss and the way she was brought up, she's afraid and she is smart and she's just discovering, really, and that the thing that happens, without spoiling the plot, you know, she makes a huge decision. She basically ends up getting herself out of a situation, right? We can see where this dynamic is going. And also, the other thing is, people don't talk about bad honeymoons. There are a lot of bad honeymoons. It is the honeymoon from hell, and I think it's in the copy of the book even, so that's not a plot spoiler. And it even, the opening sentence, you see them walking through Paris and it is pouring rain and it's just, all the dreams are just washing down into the gutter.
So much expectation. It's like so much expectation on a honeymoon. It's like, right. It almost, it's hard to live up to.
They're even staying at his former lover's apartment.
Yeah, he's a
which
piece
is
of
bananas.
Work. Right. So can I ask you? There's some fun little symbolic things. So her name is Claire Seltzer, and his name is Brian Wasserman. So that's a deliberate choice. So it's you know, Wasser being water, and he's water. He's water, but she's seltzer. She's the bubbly one.
She's bubbly.
She's bubbly. She's the one. You know, he's the star, right? He's this man about town, handsome as a movie star. Her mother is completely abnormal around him because he's so accomplished. He's so superior. He's superior. He's like an Ubermensch, a Jewish Ubermensch, and he's kind of horrible, you know?
Yeah, totally horrible.
Yeah.
Shira, I did want to ask you 2 things before you go, because we don't want to keep you. You've been very generous. I wanted to ask you what you're like as a reader a little bit, just because we are readers in this podcast, and we're, you know, we generally read things here that are we classify under the genre of romance, but we're wondering, like, all your stories are about relationships, obviously, in this book. Is this the type of book that you read typically? What are you?
I would love, I wrote it for myself. No, I mean, oh my God, relationships, books that surprise me. I have to tell you though, I favor fiction. I love the short story format, but I love novels. I also like this new, well, it's not new, but maybe it's new to me, auto fiction, Deborah Levy, work that's on the cusp or kind of porous boundaries between fiction and autobiography. These are works of fiction. I would not call this autofiction at all. These are works of fiction. These characters exist for me. They're not just like, oh, Shira could not bear to write the truth about her life. No, these three-dimensional characters. Every now and then I love a good biography, and some of them stand out. Was it Ruth Franklin? Her biography of Shirley Jackson. I think I'm not screwing this up. One of the greatest biographies I ever read was about Vera Nabokov by Stacy Schiff. There was a biography of Anne Sexton that I thought was beyond phenomenal. So a good biography will captivate me. By the way, I am simultaneous to working on this nonfiction work, the adoption one. There is a possible mystery series, stay tuned, that will be set in the Catskills.
That's what we want.
I had a blog that started off actually as a real column in the local newspaper, the Times Herald Record. The column was called Bungalow Babe, and then my blog was called Bungalow Babe in the Big City. And many years ago, I thought to do a mystery series featuring this character the character in my mind was me at the time that I started writing this, which was a mom with young kids going to the bungalows, which doesn't really exist that much except for the place that I go to right now. Rose Marins, shout out to Rose Marins in Monroe, who happens to be nursing her baby in the middle of the night and witnesses something that she doesn't realize at the time is someone dragging a body. So stay tuned. And part of my...
We would love to read that one.
Sorry, and I also want to interject because speaking of blogs, my husband, who's also our producer, William Levin, is the one who contacted us, and your connection to him is blog related. I don't know if you remember how you're connected to him, but he says that in 2007, you were promoting the Dor Hadash Israel Independence Day event at the Capitol, and that he was invited as a VIP because he had a popular blog back in the day and was going to write about the event. It was what was it called? Was it called Jewish Robot? William is the Jewish Robot, but he had these cartoons, Shabbat 6000, that he used to promote on the blog.
A lot of connections.
He connected with you over that. So here's
Corvettes, Waldbaums, Jewish Robots.
Waldbaums, Corvettes.
We hit it
Bobby
all.
and Arthur. Wait, I know we have to wrap up, but I have 3 quick things. I swear they're quick. I swear. In reading all the things about the Upper West Side, I was thinking about Loman's.
Okay.
Yes.
Curious if you had any connection to Loman's, if Loman's could have made its way in, or no, you were not interested in Loman's.
I love Loman's. I still cry.
You love Loman's.
Love Loman's, and I love Loman's from my childhood. My mother, when there was a special occasion, we went to the Loman's. It was along, I want to say, the Horace Harding, somewhere in Queens. Maybe it was Flushing, Kew Gardens. I'm not Kew Garden Hills, and then of course the Upper West Side. I grieve for the loss of Loman's.
Us too.
Everything that has taken its place is a bad imitation, including Filene's Basement. I'm sorry. Fox's is okay. Nothing has replaced Loman's.
Nothing.
Not that bogus.
No communal fitting room. No Loman's.
No. Loman's was the best. No. I am sad. There was this other store in Williamsburg. You guys might be too young. Nathan Borlam's. On Havemeyer Street. That was a serious place. The fine, the really beautiful European stuff. We got schlepped to Nathan Borlam's, and my oldest son, who's almost 40, and my daughter, who's 36, they were old enough to actually get their clothes for my oldest son's bar mitzvah at Nathan Borlam's. So, yeah.
Okay, amazing. Those can make its way into a book, and then sometimes we read books and there's a Jewish term or a Jewish tradition or something that's new to us. So I was actually curious, Mal, did you ever hear the term columnadal before?
Yeah.
Did you know the term
I love that.
I don't know.
Yes, columnadal, yeah.
I loved it, but I didn't know it. I get it.
Yes.
I completely get it, but I didn't know it. So I was curious. Columnadal, you knew.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing, Shira, is that I think if you haven't read the books of Lori Frankel, there's a book I recently read called Family
Okay.
by Lori Frankel
Okay.
that I want to recommend.
Thank you.
Based on some of what you said about adoption. I think you'd
Ooh.
really like it.
Okay.
Family.
Great. I have a whole, like a hefty bookshelf of books about adoption. And yeah, no, I am in the adoption advocacy world. If you saw the movie Three Identical Strangers about the triplets that were separated at birth,
No.
I'm from the now infamous adoption agency, Louise Wise, that specialized in Jewish babies, me, to find Jewish families. And unfortunately, scandal has it's terrible, some of the stuff that happened. On the other hand, it's how I got to my parents. A lot there. Adoption, what I will say about adoption is it is the ultimate paradox. Nobody relinquishes a baby lightly. There's always a tragic component to the relinquishment. And then paradoxically, the joy, this baby that is now free, relinquished, makes a family yearning for a child a family. And that has always struck me that both are true because, I mean, you'll read my book, but I have
read your book.
I've uncovered my family of origin. But all right, this has been the best way to start a zoilingly hot Tuesday, or any Tuesday or any day. And it was a
what a treat
to meet you guys. I feel like we should meet like off the Zoom screen.
I would love, we would adore it. Thank you so much. We loved this book and we loved talking to you about it.
Thank you guys.
Shira, thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks
Take
so
care.
much.
All
Take
right,
care.
everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Wow, that was so awesome.
Wow, awesome conversation. This book was so great.
It really was. You know, we didn't even get to talk about the Jerusalem Lover.
There was so much. There was too much to cover.
There's so much. I loved meeting her. Oh my God, that was great. What a great book. I mean it. I recommend it more than anything we've read, I think. I just could not recommend it more.
William was trying to slip me a line. We were thinking of adoption. Do you know where we could drop off our kids? But that seemed a bit inappropriate, but I'll say it now.
I think so, yeah. I think so. We can hear the joke now.
Yeah. All right.
She would love this book, by the way, Family. I hope she reads it.
Okay, cool.
I am so glad that we got to speak to her, and I was so excited to talk to you about it. So
yes, thank you. Awesome.
What
time.
a great rec.
And
what a great rec.
I want to go. If she does an event at Leonard's, we should totally try to go.
I agree. I would love to meet her in person and celebrate this book.
Yeah.
At a 1960s style bar mitzvah.
Super fun.
I love what she said about the premise and the setup is really what's autobiographical, and then there's this sort of fantasy element to it.
Yeah, it like takes off into fantasy. That was really vivid. I liked that description.
I like it, and it also makes sense about why it's so well written.
Totally.
You know? Wow, it was great. Okay, for our next episode, if you're reading along, we're reading Summertime Jews by Mark Schwartz.
Yes.
That's not me pronouncing it wrong. It's spelled S-W.
There you go.
There you go.
Summertime continues.
And Summertime continues. What a treat that we got to do some summer camp in this book with her running away with her Israeli co-counselor.
On Tisha B'Av, yes.
On Tisha B'Av, amazing. Okay, great. Mal, enjoy the day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, this podcast is produced by William Levin. It's brought to you by Hanukkah Pong, available on Amazon all year round. And we will see you soon.
Bye, Rach.
Bye.